this movie was supposed to be a T'Challa movie. He's supposed to be the Black Panther and Black Panther
Yes.
2. So whenever I think of like, I wonder why she's here doing this. Shuri's position as the lab person is very similar to Tony Stark. Like, oh, there's a problem that needs to be solved. I'm gonna go to the lab and I'm gonna whip something up and I'm gonna figure it out, because that's what she does in every movie she's in. And like, she does that. She does the thing. They're like, oh, Vision, you had this problem with your brain. How do we fix it? She's like, why don't you just do this? And they're like, we didn't think of that. Oh, and she's like, of course you did. You don't have this incredible technology that I have access to, that I have all this experience in. So she's the lab person. So like, but much like Tony Stark, I like to draw parallels between Shuri and Tony Stark, because Tony Stark was the guy who, like, when the lab thing didn't work, he was going to put the suit on and go do something about it. How many times did Tony Stark almost die before actually getting his wish and dying in battle? He's like a Viking. He was so determined to die in battle. Shuri's on the same energy level. Like, she's not going to come out of the lab, but when literally no one else is left to take the heart-shaped herb, she's going to do that, and she's going to go be Black Panther. And like, I guess she is throwing away her morals or her beliefs, because who does she meet in the dream world? She doesn't meet T'Challa and all her ancestors and all the other Black Panthers. She meets Killmonger. And what is his belief system? Like, very similar to Kukulkan's. Khan's. Like, they have very similar belief philosophies. That's why it's such an interesting the Namor was by far my favorite, and one of my favorite MCU villains. If not top three, like, for sure in Phase 4, number one. Like, I love this guy. I love the whole Atlantean culture they've developed. It was so cool. And it was an incredible parallel between how Wakanda started, the heart-shaped herb, being a plant that was grown on a vibranium land, and the same thing as the herb that gave them access to breathe underwater. It was also grown as a plant that was grown on vibranium, but this time it was underwater. So while their god showed them how to go underwater and find it, the Black Panther god, who we also know is canonically real, thank you, Thor, Love and Thunder. She was sitting actually in the auditorium, so we saw her in person. So we know the gods are real. Led the Wakandans to the mountains. So they're both. And this is what I like about this movie, is that there's like antagonists, but then there's villains. And so the antagonists are like Killmonger and Namor. Like, these are the antagonists. But the villains are like colonialism. It's like always the big bad is like, oh, well, why did you run into the mountain and hide away and like lock Wakanda up? Well, white people. And it's like, well, of course, naturally you should have, because they took over the world and the dangerous at the time. Not now, obviously it's 2022. But the same thing for his people. He was like, why would we come out? We're gonna hide. And at the very second they even find out that this place could exist, he's like, we got to kill everybody up here. I'm not agreeing with him. I'm just saying I appreciate the similarities in which way they go. I really think this was not a Shuri story. I think that Shuri, being the Black Panther and being the quintessential hero of this film and its prequel, is the lead character, but she's not. It's not a Shuri story. I actually see a lot of similarities between this movie and other political dramas like Game of Thrones, where like there are a bunch of really cool characters who are now dead immediately. And we're going to move on to these other characters who you hate, but they're going to keep doing crazy stuff that you love to hate. I think that Shuri leaving the lab behind and putting on the Tony Stark suit and drinking, the heart-shaped herb and becoming the Black Panther is a necessary part of these two warring factions who really have a lot of similarities and shouldn't even be fighting in the first place. I can't tell you how many times I've watched like a Gundam, an anime or something, and these two warring factions have everything in common and they don't need to be fighting, but two people here have beef, and so now it's this massive warring colony. Romeo and Juliet is the same thing. Like, it's a warring factions. It's two warring factions that don't need to be fighting. When Shuri and when he takes Shuri down to his land and they have the conversation, it's a peaceful time. They don't disagree with each other the entire time until the end. And he's like, yeah. And so because of that, we're going to kill all Western nations. And she's like, oh, baby. Let's back up a few minutes when we were talking about the same thing, because now it's crazy. But Killmonger was on the same energy. He was like, yeah, you've left African Americans and Africans and Black people across the world stranded, and y'all have all this technology here. You should do something about it. And so because of that, we should kill all the Western people. And it's like, wait a minute, just go back. You're just taking it too far. They're antagonists because they represent a radical notion. The radical version of like the good argument. The good argument that Black Panther 1 gave was that You have all this resources, you should share it. But the radical version is we're going to share it by sharing guns. And it's like, wait, just take it down a notch. You don't have to deliver weapons. You can just help people. And so same for this is like, yeah, it's not really a bad thing if Wakanda knows that Atlantis exists. It is a problem when America and France find out, who sends the joint operation squad to go goof on those guys, and they get goofed on in return, which is awesome, by the way. These dudes were a menace. Everybody here was loose.
But when I listen at your take, man, it kind of proves my point. Like you were covering everything, and you can't just put all of that into a 2-3 hour movie. You have a constraint.
They did. That was the point. That was the point.
You have to abide by
so long.
You have to abide by this constraint, and this is not a television show. You want to talk about all these things like Game of Thrones does, like House of the Dragon. You want to have all these characters. You have to make a TV show. You can't just make a movie.
You can make a movie.
You want to divide it into the typical 4-act structure or 3-act structure, whichever way.
I think
you will not be.
I think 3-act and 4-act structures are good for when you start your film craft, but I think that in the higher levels of an art form, I think that limiting yourself to things like that is a waste of your time and your efforts. I think that when you have a 2-hour movie, if you have a 1.5-hour movie, you can stuff it as much as you want to. The Matrix is only 2 hours. How much lore is in the Matrix? So insane amount. You can watch the Matrix frame by frame, and you'll be picking up on things. The books they're picking up when they're opening them and going to the cutout of the page. The books themselves are about the film. Like they're just analogies for it. Like you can do so much. I don't think this movie is too overstuffed. I really, really don't. I can
prove that it was overstuffed. It's because
I am
definitely sure that they cut out a lot of scenes, man. It was obvious they cut out a lot of scenes.
They definitely cut out a lot, but I think movies like I think there is so much content in here, and they had such a long story to tell. It's not a surprise that it costs 2 hours and 45 minutes. But I also feel like I learned so much about this place, and I still want more. But like that's the beauty of this thing. They don't give you everything.
I sort of agree with both of you because I do feel like there's a lot in there. But sometimes there's also, and here's the thing, I wasn't really bothered by the length of the film. Like, and honestly, I was more like, okay, there's a lot going on here. There is a lot going on here. I would argue that most of it was valuable. There's some stuff that I feel like could have been condensed into like the ideas could have been condensed into something more rather simpler without sacrificing the quality of the storytelling. Like for instance, like the motivation for Kukulkan, like I'm gonna call it mass genocide, there was never any like second guessing or second doubt like of that, and that was my problem, because when they go into the depths, and I thought they were going to share like a moment between, and maybe he's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do this or whatever, but then something like innocuous happens that looks like a conflict that reignites his like, no, I'm going to kill everybody type of thing. And it's, for instance, because you see this all the time, but it's so effective. It's like when like things seem to be going okay, but then something innocuous happens, and then like a series of events just leads to making it seem that one of them is being antagonistic to the other. Like for instance, when Lupita's character was coming in to arrest you, you know how she kills the one of the I don't know if it was one of his people.
Yeah.
Like that should have been used in my mind as a catalyst for him, like being like, you know what, this is why we can't get along. This is why it's only us, nationalistic point of view,
it is,
or whatever.
That was literally what sparked the war between him and Wakanda. Was when she shot her.
Yes, but that was like also like there was no common ground reached beforehand about like, maybe I don't need to kill everybody or whatever. And they could have used that in as they did for this reason, but also for the war between them, but also like, this is it, I'm gonna kill everybody, even you guys.
He was starting with Wakanda.
Exactly. And so I agree. And honestly, sometimes I think writers need to forget about structure. Like they need to stop thinking about structure. They just need to really focus on relationships and how those relationships inform the story. Because you can look. I mean, there's so many, like, and The Matrix is a good example. That story, because of the lore, the lore seems rich because of the relationship between the characters, and the character, you know, once you build those relationships, they themselves reveal the lore, other than like the beginning, you know, sort of voiceovers and stuff like that. And but it's what's really key is the relationships, and that's something that I kind of missed a little bit in Wakanda Forever, is that sort of, except for the mom, obviously, she's amazing, you know, her and Shuri are just, you know, it's just fantastic, and I love the little moments that they had, you know, out in the desert and stuff like that. And that was really cool. But everything else just felt like kind of just sort of add-ons, instead of like, maybe let's put it as add-ons, sure, to support the characters, support the story, but using real relationships happening all over the place. So
actually, I agree with you. I think that is one of my big critiques. Similar to the Game of Thrones, characters' relationships can come and go so frequently that you almost take them for granted. You're like, or they're trivialized. You're like, okay, like, oh, these two are a couple. So what though? Like, if someone can cheat, someone can get killed, both of you can die, like, or you can get snapped out of existence in the next movie. Like, so what is the real repercussion of this relationship?
Right.
And this is kind of always the struggle of having a bunch of characters. Is like, and again, this is again one of the critiques of the show, of movies like this. It's like, you have a bunch of characters, a lot.
Yeah.
They have a lot of characters in this movie alone, without even outside movies. There's a lot of characters. There's like, what, 20 major actors in this movie who are like doing something. Like, there's 3 right here, boom, 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 and these are the antagonists. And it's like, gosh, not to mention his mother, and like all the other Wakandans, and then all the Americans, and then in the French Parliament. You're like, this is a crazy deep storyline. Like, it's not deep, but it's just a lot of people. And it's
Can I just quickly just sidebar and just quickly add that I've always known Lupita was like Mexican, and, you know, and all that stuff. When she started speaking Spanish, I melted. So yeah, and like, that's my Mexican Spanish, and I was just like, oh my god. Here's the thing: I've always had a huge crush on her. Like, who wouldn't? But like, when she started speaking Spanish, I'm like, oh my god. Like, let me just, let me get on one knee right now. But anyway, I thought she was amazing. I thought she could have been a bigger role, I think.
It's funny you say that, because my fiance was saying, she was like, because we only watched the first Black Panther trailer when it first dropped at the Comic-Con. We didn't watch a single other trailer. So like a year ago we watched it, and we haven't seen anything. So we've just been waiting, like, all right, what's going to happen in the movie? And her prediction was that Nakia, her character, would become the Black Panther.
That's what I thought.
She was the type. She was the type. Okoye was the general. She belonged to the throne, but she belonged to the state, Wakanda, the country. She didn't belong to T'Challa. But Nakia was like, no, that's my family. And she's the first one. Like, when Killmonger came and overthrew the throne, Okoye goes with the throne. So like, that's why I didn't really blame Ramonda for snapping and firing Okoye, to be honest. I was like, oh. When she brought up the Killmonger receipts, I was like, you did not help us. But Nakia did. And like, all the time she's like, yeah, I don't serve Wakanda, I serve the people of Wakanda. And by that, my people. And I'm like, yeah, now you're talking. Like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, I love that. I definitely, and like, so for her to go be the one to rescue Shuri, it makes me wonder. I'm like, I wonder if this was a part of the original Black Panther script, or if this is the new thing. I always think that Namor and Shuri were going to have a will they thing, because of the way the movie was positioning them. But I did not. I'm glad it didn't go anywhere. 2, yet, and that's that. Because Namor is not dead, and if you didn't notice, similar to Multiverse of Madness, they were running from this guy the entire movie.
Oh man!
If you don't remember Multiverse of Madness, Wanda was not stopped. Every time someone got in her face, they were mowed down, and they had to leave dimensions. You can't just run away. You have to change realities to get away from this monster. But like this guy, like, Americans aren't safe, Wakandans aren't safe. No one's safe. He's coming for your people, and like, he was just let loose in this movie. It was so cool, and it's so refreshing to be like, how's he so strong? Oh, he's a mutant. I can just say it now. It's just wonderful. He's a mutant. That's why he's so powerful. And it's like, that's the explanation. now we're deep into Marvel Comics, territory, because we can just say things like that, like, oh, why is Thor so strong? Well, he's an Asgardian, so like he's a special race, and he's also a descendant of a god, so he's a demigod Asgardian, so he's super duper strong. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
A mutant. The end. It's magic now. We're back in the magic zone of the comics, and it's a good time. Speaking of magic, these Mesoamerican aesthetics are bonkers. I thought Wakanda had cool architecture and aesthetics. Dude, look at my man, bro.
Dude,
look at
it's
this guy's
so
headdress.
beautiful.
Dude,
That headdress, and then that shot when he's coming down and like in this drone. I'm
the
like,
flying. Oh my
oh,
god, it's so cool. Dude, Namor is so
beautiful.
cool.
Costume Oscar for this movie.
Oh,
100%. Like,
For
are you
sure.
kidding? Like,
This is
Oh
what I'm
my
talking
God.
about. When people are like, oh yeah, I give this movie like a 7. I'm like, this is about to get Oscars. Are we sure we're talking about the same movie?
I mean, I'm just
I
talking
can't just-
narratively.
I
Yeah.
understand. I understand. It's easy to look at movies like this and be like,
Yeah,
oh, it's
but-
Marvel and it's Wakanda, it's Black Panther 2. So the quality and the production level is going to be astronomical.
It's insane. And
So what you're really waiting for is the story and the characters to sweep you away. And so when they
yeah,
don't sweep you away, you're like, well, this movie. Oh
Yeah.
God, I'm sorry.
and look, it's not to undercut like the significance of the art and everything, but sometimes like
course.
if a story, not this doesn't apply to this movie, but sometimes when the story is really bad, sometimes everything else is just just dressing. It's
Yeah,
just
it
not
is.
like as important because like it's pretty to look at, but like
Avatar,
I don't.
the first Avatar movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
mean, hey,
Wonderful movie. If you ever seen it, go watch it. I recommend it. If you've seen it though, name a line.
yeah, no, it's just Dances with Wolves.
Quote the movie. Quote
Yeah.
Avatar.
I can't.
No one can.
No.
There's nothing to quote. It's not no storyline to
Yeah, I
begin with.
know.
It's like 3 other Disney movies slapped into one with a huge CGI budget on it. Cool, go watch it.
It's just Dances with Wolves all
Yes.
over again.
And
And
Pocahontas.
and Pocahontas, yes. And that's like has been my issue like with it for years. But
I'm glad this
we're not
wasn't
talking about
that.
Avatar.
Yeah, I'm glad this wasn't that. I'm glad this was like
No, yeah, this
there's
was
a lot of soul into this.
I had fun. It was I got emotional. I mean, that's all I could ever ask for a movie. Like fun, keep me
Yeah.
emotional. I'm just being very like narratively picky about like certain decisions because like it did throw me off while I was watching the movie. But I mean, I would always tell people, yeah, go watch it. It's so fun. It's emotional. I mean, it's Chadwick. Makes you miss Chadwick in the best way possible, not in
It does.
a negative way.
It
So
does.
and then can I ask you guys real quick? So what do you guys think about like the T'Challa Jr.?
Oh,
like,
I
Prince
cried.
T'Challa?
First of all, I was boo-hooing. I didn't tear up. I was in that.
Yeah. Well, it's twofold because that, but also because T'Challa, Black Panther, is so critical to the comics. He's just so critical, and I was wondering how are they going to resolve this? And then when I
They're
see
not.
the little kid, I'm like, oh, he's T'Challa as well. Like they're just going to recast him later. Like, but
T'Challa the second.
Y'all can quote me for this. What are we today? We're November 17th, 2022. T'Challa Jr. and Thor's daughter are gonna date. Quote me on this
Oh
Oh.
God.
oh my god.
That's gonna be some years from now, huh?
one.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay.